Welcome. Today is the second day of the first week in Advent. First candle is lit, and we're going to read the second chapter of Tabitha's Travels. The chapter is titled Brothers. I have seen it, brother, Ananias continued, rubbing his temples and looking as though he were in a trance. The boy is trouble. We must send him away. Eliakim let out a snort and shook his head in disgust. If I change the course of this caravan every time you see something, we'd be going around in circles. The boy stays with us. Knowing his elder brother's word was final, Ananias didn't argue, but as he walked away in anger, he said over his shoulder, Mark my words, brother, the boy shall be the downfall of us all. Tabitha looked back and forth between her retreating uncle and her father. You will not send Jotham away, will you? She asked her father. The long black beard on Eliakim's chin bounced as he laughed. No, my daughter, we shall not send the boy away. As if to seal the statement, Eliakim turned his attention back to Jotham. The others had just finished introducing themselves to the boy. Master Eliakim, Jotham said, his eyebrows creased into a frown, have you seen any other caravans since yesterday? Eliakim shook his head slowly. Sadly, no, my friend. We have just come from the hills to the south, and had only just approached this road when we heard your yell. Jotham's lip began to tremble. I was just hoping. Yes, I understand. But you are safe now, and I say again that we will help you to find your family. But even if that fails, you may stay with us as long as you wish. Jotham grinned a great grin, and Tabitha thought what a wonderful day it was that Jehovah should bring her such a friend. Tabitha, her father said, show Jotham the camp, and then finish your chores for dinner. Yes, father, Tabitha answered. Taking Jotham by the hand, she led him around the tiny valley, pointing out which tent belonged to whom and where each uncle's animals were kept. Together they watered the lambs, and Tabitha noticed how easily Jotham worked with the tiny sheep. Next they went out among the bushes of a nearby stream and collected dead branches for the fire that night. Suddenly Jotham let out a yelp of pain and started dancing on one foot. What is it, my friend? Tabitha said, dropping her sticks and rushing over to him. A scorpion? Jotham howled in fright. I've been stung by a scorpion! Jotham plopped down in the dirt, threw off his sandal, and held up his foot, crying in panic. Tabitha was scared, too. The sting of a scorpion could kill even a large man, but as always she acted quickly and calmly. Watching carefully for the offending creature, she knelt down and looked at Jotham's foot. A tiny spot of blood on the sole marked the spot where the stinger had penetrated. But it was a very small sting, Tabitha noted, and didn't have the redness or swelling of other scorpion stings she'd seen. In fact, it didn't really look. Quickly, Tabitha found the sandal Jotham had thrown off. There in the bottom, with just the very point sticking through the other side, was the thorn of a nearby bush. That was no scorpion that bit you, Tabitha laughed. It was a Sisyphus bush. Jotham stopped wailing and looked at her. It was what? He sniffed. A thorn, she said. You stepped on a thorn. Jotham's face turned red, even as the last of his sobs bounced around in his chest. Well, he said defensively, it could have been a scorpion. Tabitha forced her laughter to stay in her belly, realizing she had embarrassed her friend. With just a slight smile on her face, she said, Of course it could have been. It might have even been a snake. But Jehovah has shown us good fortune in making it simply a thorn. Come, let us clean your wound. Pulling Jotham's arm around her neck, Tabitha helped him hobble over to the stream, where she bathed his foot in cold water. After she dried his foot with the bottom of her tunic, she pulled the thorn from Jotham's sandal and tied it back on his foot. Jotham walked hesitantly at first, but by the time they had finished gathering wood and returning to camp, Tabitha noticed he was walking as if nothing had happened. Not wanting to embarrass her friend, she kept the secret of Jotham's panic hidden deep in her heart, especially when they met her brothers. The 3 older boys were returning from the fields just as Tabitha's mother was calling that dinner was ready. Her oldest brother, almost a man, was kind to Jotham, and her youngest brother, barely older than her new friend, was too busy with a cousin to pay much attention. But her middle brother, as she expected, was cruel to the new boy, mocking his story about killing a lion and laughing at him for his fears. If not for the protection of Tabitha's older brother, the boy might have picked a fight with Jotham right then and there. "Don't let him bother you," Tabitha said to Jotham as she pulled him away. "He's always getting in trouble for being cruel." She was proven right a moment later when Eliakim took his middle son by the ear and led him off squealing behind the tent. Tabitha's entire clan gathered around the cook tent. Eliakim returned, followed by a whimpering middle son, and thanked Jehovah for the meal. Then the men began dishing up their food, followed by the older boys, and then the women. Finally, the children were allowed to fill their own bowls. This was the custom, Tabitha knew, and was meant for the survival of the family. If the men were not strong and healthy, then there would be neither food nor safety for any of them. Tabitha and Jotham sat under an olive tree to eat. As they slurped up their stew, Tabitha's middle brother came over to them. "I am sorry for making fun of you," he said to Jotham, and Tabitha thought that, for once, he seemed sincere. "Please forgive my rudeness, and accept my friendship in return." Jotham seemed to study the boy's face for a long moment, and Tabitha thought he had good reason not to trust the boy. But then Jotham smiled and said, "All is forgiven. Come, sit with us and eat." The brother's face looked a bit tortured. He hesitated a moment and then said, "Well, I believe I'll just stand." After dinner, as the sun was slipping behind the jagged hills, the entire camp gathered around a fire to relax and tell stories. Several told of small events that occurred during the day, but then people started running out of stories. That's when Tabitha spoke up. "Uncle Hasba has a story," she said, taunting her favorite uncle. "I have no such thing," Hasba gruffed. "Surely you do," Tabitha laughed. "A story of you and grandmother's donkey." "Keep quiet, child," Hasba threatened in fun, "or I shall fill your bed with goat cheese." "I would gladly sleep with the cheese of goats if you will but tell your story," Tabitha giggled. "Oh, very well," Hasba huffed, but just as he opened his mouth to tell the story, his brother Uzziah cut in. "It happened on the trail this afternoon," Uzziah started, and Hasba looked at him in surprise. Uzziah told the story of how Hasba had tried to get Tabitha's donkey moving. So there's Hasba pulling at the mule with all his strength, when the goat comes up and bites him on the rear end. The people erupted in laughter, imagining the sight. So Hasba jumps in the air, screaming like a buzzard, Uzziah continued. He spins around and starts kicking at the goat, and then the donkey bites him on the rear end. At this, everyone almost fell over. They were laughing so hard. And Hasba finally spoke up. "And what does my brother do?" he said indignantly. "He rebukes me for being cruel to the animals." At this final twist in the story, Tabitha's clan lost all control, laughing hysterically at the folly of the 2 elder brothers. Finally, as the laughter began to die down, Eliakim stood and moved to the head of the circle. As he did so, Hasba and Uzziah stepped aside to make room. The others forced the last of their giggles back into their bellies and waited silently for Eliakim to speak. "It is written, Eliakim started without introduction, that Jehovah shall send his anointed one to bind up the brokenhearted, to comfort all who mourn, and provide for those who grieve. And so we wait. We wait for that anointed one to appear. We wait for the Messiah to reveal himself to us. But this day, he continued, looking now toward Jotham, this day Jehovah has brought us one who cannot wait. He has brought us one whose heart is broken, one who mourns, and one who grieves. And so, Eliakim said, looking now at the other faces in the camp, the light of the fire dancing on his own face, we ourselves must be like the Messiah to this young one. Even as we wait for Jehovah's anointed one, we must act as he would. We must do what we must to bind the broken heart, to comfort him who mourns, provide for him who grieves. It is thus so, and it shall be in the name of Jehovah. As one, all those gathered around the fire said, Selah, and Tabitha wondered if her uncle Artemus would heed his brother's words, or if he would try to harm her new friend Jotham. She was still wondering late that night as she lay in bed listening to the crickets, when she heard footsteps creeping up slowly outside the tent. Jesus has a big job. At any given time, at least half of the billions of people in this world are in need of help. Some are brokenhearted, some are mourning a loss, some just don't know what to do. Certainly Jesus can and does touch all who are in need, but God also has another plan. He has assigned us the honor of being Jesus to those we know and meet. You see, even though Jesus came to earth to save us from our own sins, he also came to show us how to love others. He came to give us our assignment. Isaiah tells us, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners, to comfort all who mourn, and provide for those who grieve. Tabitha's father is wise in knowing that God wants each of us to care for those around us. Wouldn't this Advent season be a good time to practice that more and more?